I'm Dr. Emma Collins, a biomedical scientist. What if I told you that the single greatest predictor of whether you'll live independently in your 80s or 90 seconds isn't your cholesterol, your blood pressure, or even your genetics? It's a factor that's often overlooked, a silent epidemic taking place called sarcopenia. That's the progressive loss of your muscle. But here's the kicker. The science is now clear that you don't need a gym or expensive equipment to fight it. In fact, two surprisingly simple home exercises can profoundly slow and, in some cases, even reverse this loss of strength and independence. So, if you've ever felt a little less steady on your feet, found it just a bit harder to push yourself up from a low chair, then you need to listen closely. If that feeling sounds familiar at all, do me a favor and let me know in the comments where you're watching from today, and be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, because what we're about to uncover is truly foundational for your future health. All right, so let's get right into it. We're going to begin by tackling a myth, a deeply held belief that almost everyone, including many doctors, has come to accept as truth. And that is the idea that walking is enough exercise to protect your muscles as you get older. Now, please don't get me wrong. Walking is absolutely wonderful for you. I encourage it. It is fantastic for your cardiovascular health, for your heart, and your lungs. It improves your mood, it enhances circulation throughout your entire body, and it definitely helps to maintain your day-to-day mobility. It gets your joints moving. It keeps you engaged with the world. But here is the uncomfortable scientific truth. When it comes to the specific, critical task of preserving your muscle tissue, walking is simply not enough, not even close. Here's why. To grow or even just to maintain itself, muscle tissue thrives on a principle called mechanical overload. That's a scientific term, but the concept is very simple. It's the stress that comes when you challenge a muscle to do something that is just a little bit harder than what it's used to doing. Think of it as giving your muscle a clear, undeniable reason to adapt and become stronger. You have to ask it to do more than the bare minimum. Walking, while it is rhythmic and consistent and healthy, it rarely, if ever, provides that necessary overload. Your quadriceps in the front of your thighs, your hamstrings in the back, your glutes, your calves, they are all essentially coasting. They are going through a movement that they were designed, over millennia of evolution, to do almost effortlessly. When you are walking, there is very little reason for your muscle fibers to say, hey, we need to get stronger, or even, we need to maintain our current size. If we could zoom down into the microscopic, cellular level of your muscle while you're taking a walk, what we would see is that this mechanical overload, this challenge, is the spark that turns on a key signaling pathway inside your cells. It's called the mTOR pathway. That stands for mechanistic target of rapamycin. Now, you don't need to remember the name, just know this. mTOR is one of the central master molecular switches for building new muscle protein. When you challenge a muscle, this switch gets flipped to on. When the muscle is just coasting, the switch stays off. And without the adequate activation of this mTOR pathway, your body's default mode, especially as you age, is breakdown, not a buildup. That is the fundamental process happening in sarcopenia. And walking, for all its benefits, simply does not create the degree of muscular tension required to strongly and consistently flip that mTOR switch to on. Let me give you a simple analogy. Imagine your muscles are a team of employees in a company. Walking is like giving those employees the same routine, an easy task to do every single day. For the first week, it might be a little new, but after a month, a year, a decade, they can do it in their sleep. They can do it with half their attention. They become efficient at that one task, but they stop improving. They stop growing because there is no new challenge. There is no incentive for them to become more capable. Now, resistance exercise, on the other hand, that's like assigning that same team of employees a brand new, tough project that pushes them to their limits. Suddenly, they have to communicate better. They have to learn new skills. They have to grow, adapt, and become fundamentally more efficient and more powerful to meet this new demand. That is what a squat or a push-up does to your muscle cells. It's a new project that demands growth, and the science on this is overwhelmingly clear. Multiple studies in older adults have shown that while a regular walking program is excellent for cardiovascular endurance, it has a minimal, almost negligible effect on preventing the decline of what are called fast-twitch muscle fibers. These are the very fibers that are most critical for strength, for power, for quick reactions. These are the fibers you desperately need to catch yourself if you trip on a rug. They are the fibers you use to get up out of a low chair without using your hands. They are what you need to climb a flight of stairs without feeling winded, or to lift a heavy bag of groceries out of the car without straining your back. Without targeted resistance, these specific, powerful fibers atrophy. They shrink away with age, and they shrink away rapidly. This is precisely why we can see older adults who are dedicated walkers, people who walk every single day, sometimes for miles, but who still struggle with noticeable weakness, with poor balance, and with a slow, creeping loss of their independence. Walking keeps the heart pumping and the joints lubricated, but it does not build the protective armor of muscle tissue that shields you against frailty. So, if that's the myth, what is the reality we're up against? This brings us to the next crucial part of our deep dive: understanding what sarcopenia really is and why it accelerates with age. Now that we have established that walking alone, as wonderful as it is not going to be our shield, let's look much more closely at what we're really up against: sarcopenia. The term itself comes from the Greek language. Sarx means flesh and penia means loss. So, quite literally, it means the loss of flesh. But beneath that simple, almost crude definition is a deeply complex, multi-layered biological process. It's not just one thing going wrong. It's a cascade of events. A perfect stoicism is happening at the cellular level. Here's what is really going on inside your body. Our skeletal muscles, the muscles that move our bodies, are made up of millions of tiny fibers. These are bundles of cells that contract to move. And every one of these fibers is packed with something called mitochondria. You have probably heard of them before. They are the tiny power plants of the cell. Their job is to take the food you eat and the air you breathe and convert it into the energy currency that your cells use to do everything. It's called ATP. With aging, two devastating things begin to happen at the same time. First, the mitochondria have become less efficient. They start to produce less energy and more metabolic exhaust, or free radicals. They get older and more dysfunctional. Second, the signaling pathways that tell your body to create new, healthy mitochondria slow down. So you have older, less efficient power plants, and you're not building new ones fast enough to replace them. This combination is devastating for muscle health because muscle is an incredibly energy-hungry tissue. But it gets more complicated. One of the other key culprits in this process is something scientists call anabolic resistance. Let's break that down. Anabolic means to build up. Resistance means it's not listening. So your muscles become resistant to the signals that tell them to build up. When you are in your 20 seconds or 30 seconds, if you eat a protein-rich meal like a piece of chicken or some eggs, or if you do a strength workout, your muscle cells respond very quickly. The message is received loud and clear. The machinery for building new muscle protein gets switched on, and it gets to work. But by the time you are in your 60 seconds, 70 seconds, or 80 seconds, that signal is blunted. It's muffled. Your muscles just don't respond as strongly anymore. That means the same stimulus, the same meal, the same exercise produces far less growth. It's like turning up the volume on an old radio, only to realize the speakers are muffled and full of static. The message is being sent, but it is not getting through with the same clarity. So you have to work harder or smarter just to get the same effect you use to get effortlessly. On top of that, you have another factor. It's a condition that scientists have named inflammaging. It's a combination of the words inflammation and aging. Research has shown that as we get older, our immune systems can become dysregulated. They tend to produce more low-level chronic inflammatory molecules that circulate throughout the body. You may have heard of some of them: like interleukin-6 or tumor necrosis factor alpha. These molecules, in a low, constant drip, they interfere with the ability of muscle cells to repair themselves and to regenerate after being used. In essence, your muscles are trying to rebuild, but they are constantly working against a background noise of low-grade inflammation. It's like trying to build a house during a constant drizzling rainstorm. It just makes everything slower, harder, and less efficient. And there's one more critical piece to this puzzle. It's the decline of our motor neurons. These are the precious nerve cells that extend from your spinal cord and connect directly to your muscle fibers. They are the communication lines. They are what tell your muscles to contract. When you decide to stand up, it's a motor neuron that delivers that message to your leg muscles. As we age, for reasons we are still trying to fully understand, these motor neurons begin to die off. And when a motor neuron dies, all the muscle fibers it was connected to lose their signal from the nervous system. They become orphaned, disconnected. And without that connection, they have no purpose, and they eventually wither away and die. This is a major reason why sarcopenia isn't just about a loss of muscle size. It's also about a loss of coordination, a loss of strength, and a loss of power. The communication lines are going down. Let me break all of this down with that simple analogy we touched on earlier. Imagine your muscles are like a thriving, bustling city. When you are young, this city runs smoothly. The mitochondria are the power grid, providing plentiful, efficient energy to everyone. The protein synthesis machinery is the construction crew, constantly repairing old buildings and putting up new ones. The motor neurons are the traffic light system, perfectly coordinated, ensuring messages get where they need to go instantly. And inflammation is like pollution in the air. In the young city, the air is clean and clear. The city just works. But with age, which is what sarcopenia is, the city starts to decline. The power plants, the mitochondria, start to falter and break down. The construction crews, your protein synthesis, they slow down and become less responsive. The traffic lights, your motor neurons, they start to fail, creating communication breakdowns. And the pollution, that low-grade inflammation, builds up, making everything harder for the citizens, your muscle cells. The city still functions, but it is weaker, it is less efficient, and it is much, much more fragile. That, in a nutshell, is sarcopenia. And this matters so profoundly because your muscle is not just tissue for movement. It is so much more than that. This is a critical point. Your skeletal muscle is also a primary metabolic organ. It acts as a massive reservoir for glucose, the sugar in your bloodstream. After a meal, it's your muscles that pull the majority of that sugar out of your bloodstream, protecting you from high blood sugar and insulin resistance. It also stores amino acids, the building blocks of protein, that your body can mobilize and use during times of stress or illness. And when you use your muscles, they secrete powerful signaling molecules called myokines, which are like hormones that talk to your brain, your liver, and even your immune system. So, losing muscle is not just about losing strength. It is about losing a critical organ of longevity. It's about your entire metabolic system becoming less resilient. And this is precisely why the exercises we are about to discuss are so incredibly powerful. They aren't just making you stronger in a mechanical sense. They are literally helping to reprogram the biology of your muscle cells. They are turning back some of these aging signals, cleaning up the pollution, repairing the power plants, and helping to restore that crucial metabolic balance. But here is the profoundly good news. That city, your city, can be revitalized. The decline is not inevitable, and the tools to begin the rebuilding process are simpler and more accessible than you could ever imagine. So let's transition from the problem to the solution. This brings us to the most practical and empowering part of our discussion, the powerful home solution. We're going to cover the 2 home-based exercises that research consistently shows are absolute powerhouses against sarcopenia. And the best part, they require no expensive equipment, and you can begin at any age, at any fitness level. Weapon number 1, the squat. Now, let me be very clear. When I say the word squat, I am not necessarily talking about loading a heavy barbell on your back in a commercial gym, although resistance training with weights is certainly excellent if you have access to it and know how to do it safely. I am talking about the simple, fundamental, primal human act of repeatedly lowering and raising your body using the powerful muscles of your legs and your hips. You can start with your own body weight. You can start by using a chair for assistance, and you can eventually progress to holding a small weight if you so choose. The beauty of this movement is its profound efficiency. It recruits the largest and most metabolically active muscles in your entire body. Your quadriceps on the front of your thighs, your hamstrings on the back, your glutes, which are the largest muscles in your body, and even your calves. These are precisely the muscles that are most vulnerable to age-related atrophy, and they are the muscles that are most critical for your functional independence. They are what get you up and down, what keep you stable, what power you through your day. Here is why the squat is so powerful from a physiological standpoint. When you lower your body into a squat, those massive muscles experience that critical mechanical tension across a wide range of motion. That tension acts as a direct signal. It triggers specialized sensors in the muscle fibers called mechanoreceptors. Those receptors, in turn, activate those powerful signaling pathways we talked about earlier, like mTOR, which directly stimulate protein synthesis. This is how the cell begins the process of repairing itself and adding new protein structures, which effectively makes the muscle stronger and more resilient. You are sending the signal to your cellular construction crews to get to work. But the benefits go far, far beyond just muscle size. Squats also challenge your neuromuscular system. That's the communication highway between your brain, your nerves, and your muscle fibers. Each single repetition requires an immense amount of coordination, balance, and the activation of dozens of small stabilizing muscles all around your core and your hips. This constant practice helps to maintain and even strengthen those motor unit connections, the very connections that, as we discussed, tend to degrade with age. It's like actively maintaining the telephone lines between your brain and your body. In fact, the research is crystal clear on this. Lower body strength is one of the absolute strongest predictors of longevity and independence in older adults. Study after study has shown that people with stronger leg muscles are significantly less likely to experience falls and are far less likely to suffer from mobility-related disability. And it goes even deeper, down to your mitochondria, your cellular power plants. Performing squats creates short, intense bursts of energy demand. This demand forces your muscle cells to adapt by building more and more efficient mitochondria. This process has a name. It's called mitochondrial biogenesis. It literally means the birth of new mitochondria. This not only improves your muscular endurance, making it easier to climb stairs or walk long distances, but it also fundamentally enhances your overall metabolic health. More mitochondria means your body becomes better at using energy. That means better insulin sensitivity, more efficient disposal of glucose from your blood, and a significantly lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes. So, how do you start? The key is to start safely and build confidence. If you are brand new to squats, or if you feel unsteady on your feet, I want you to begin with chair squats. It is the perfect starting point. Simply find a sturdy chair, one that won't slide. A dining room chair is often perfect. Sit down on the edge of the chair, with your feet planted firmly on the floor, about shoulder width apart. Keep your chest tall and your back straight. Now, without using your hands, I want you to stand up, slowly. Drive the force through your heels. Then, with just as much control, slowly lower yourself back down until you are seated again. That is 1 repetition. Aim for a set of 10 repetitions. Over time, as you get stronger, the goal is to do this without any momentum, with pure muscle control. Then, you can gradually increase the number of sets. Maybe you do 2 sets of 10, then 3 sets of 10. Once that feels manageable, you can progress to regular bodyweight squats without the chair. And eventually, maybe even hold a small dumbbell or a kettlebell in what's called a goblet squat. Let me give you an analogy for this. Think of squats as the compound interest of exercise. Just like saving a small amount of money consistently can grow into a huge sum over the decades, performing squats regularly, even just a few sets a week, compounds into incredible benefits over time. It compounds into better balance, stronger bones, more resilient mitochondria, and a much, much lower risk of sarcopenia. So, the first and perhaps most important weapon in your arsenal against sarcopenia is the squat. It is simple, it is scalable, and it is profoundly backed by science. But squats are only part of the story. There is a second movement that complements them beautifully, targeting not just strength, but also stability and functional independence in your upper body. And that is what we are going to explore right now. Weapon number 2, the push-up. Now, I know what many of you might be thinking as soon as you hear that word. Push-ups? Dr. Patrick, I can't do a single push-up on the floor. I hear that all the time, and it is a completely valid concern. But here is the key, and this is what makes this movement so brilliant. The push-up is one of the most scalable exercises we have. You are in complete control of the difficulty. You can start with wall push-ups, which almost everyone can do. You can then progress to inclined push-ups on a kitchen counter or a sturdy table. Then you can move to knee push-ups on the floor, and eventually, maybe, to traditional floor push-ups. You might even experiment with more advanced versions later on. But regardless of the level you start at, this one movement recruits your chest, your shoulders, your triceps, and, crucially, the deep stabilizing muscles of your core. Why is this so important? Because sarcopenia does not discriminate. It doesn't just affect your lower body. We often focus so much on the legs because mobility and falls are such critical and visible issues. But the loss of upper body strength is just as damaging to your long-term independence, just in a different way. Weak chest and arm muscles make it difficult to do everyday tasks. Things like pushing yourself up from a low chair or getting up off the floor if you do fall. It makes it hard to carry a full laundry basket, or to lift a bag of groceries, or even just to maintain good upright posture throughout the day. Over time, this slow erosion of upper body strength translates directly into reduced independence and a lower quality of life. So let's zoom back into that cellular level again. Just like the squat does for the lower body, the push-up generates that essential mechanical overload, particularly in the pushing muscles of the upper body. This directly stimulates the mTOR signaling pathway and activates protein synthesis in those specific muscle fibers. But there is something unique and incredibly valuable about the push-up. Because the exercise requires you to hold your body in a straight line, from your head to your heels or your knees, you are forced to stabilize your trunk. This activates the deep core muscles that wrap around your midsection like a corset. These muscles are essential for balance and for transferring force between your upper and lower body. Stronger core muscles translate directly into fewer falls and better, more confident coordination in all your daily activities. Push-ups also do something wonderful for your bones. They stress the bones of your wrists, your arms, and your shoulders in a safe, productive way. This stress stimulates a process called bone remodeling, where your body lays down new, dense bone tissue. This is incredibly valuable because very often osteoporosis, the condition of brittle bones, develops right alongside sarcopenia. In fact, scientists now have a term for this dual condition, osteosarcopenia. By loading both the muscles and the bones of the upper body at the same time, push-ups address two major problems of aging at once. And of course, there is a metabolic angle here too. Upper body strength training, just like lower body training, has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity and help lower fasting glucose levels. Remember our analogy. Skeletal muscle acts like a giant sponge for the glucose in your blood. The more muscle mass you activate across your entire body, the bigger that sponge becomes, and the better your blood sugar control will be. This directly reduces your risk for conditions like type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome. Let me give you a real-world analogy for the push-up. Think of it as your body's own built-in portable resistance training tool. You don't need weights, you don't need machines, you don't need a gym membership. You are literally using your own body as the resistance. Your own body weight is the weight. This makes the push-up one of the most accessible, democratic, and effective longevity practices available to every single human being. So here is a practical progression, a way to get started today. If floor push-ups are too difficult, I want you to begin with wall push-ups. Stand facing a wall, about an arm's length away. Place your hands on the wall, just a little wider than your shoulders, at about shoulder height. Now, keeping your body in a straight line, bend your elbows and lean in until your nose is close to the wall. Then, press back to the starting position. That's 1 repetition. Once that feels easy, and you can do, say, 3 sets of 12, it's time to progress. Find an inclined surface, like the edge of your kitchen counter or a sturdy table. The lower the surface, the harder the exercise will be. From there, you can move to doing push-ups on your knees on the floor, and finally, to standard push-ups. The goal is never perfection on day 1. The goal is consistency and gradual, patient progression. So now we have our 2 powerhouse exercises, the squat and the push-up. Together, they cover all the major muscle groups of the lower and upper body. They stimulate your muscles to grow stronger. They improve your bone density and your mitochondrial health, and they enhance your balance and your metabolic resilience. But there is still more to this story, because strengthening these muscles does something even more profound. And that brings us to our next section, where we connect these movements to the bigger picture. How muscle acts as a metabolic organ. Up to this point, we have really looked at squats and push-ups as movements that build and preserve the mechanical function of muscle. But here is the deeper, more profound truth. Your muscles are not just for movement. They are a dynamic, active metabolic organ. An organ that is every bit as important to your overall health as your liver, your pancreas, or your heart. And when you strengthen your muscles, you are fundamentally influencing your entire body's physiology. Let's start with glucose. With blood sugar. As I mentioned briefly, your skeletal muscle is the single largest site of glucose disposal in your entire body. It is the primary place where the sugar from the food you eat goes. After you eat a meal, especially a meal rich in carbohydrates, your blood sugar rises. In response, your pancreas releases insulin. Insulin's job is to knock on the doors of your cells and tell them to open up and take in that glucose. Your muscle cells have more of these doors than almost any other tissue. When your muscles are strong, responsive, and metabolically healthy, they act like a massive, thirsty sponge. They soak up that glucose efficiently, storing it as glycogen to be used for future energy. This keeps your blood sugar levels in a healthy, stable range. But when you lose muscle mass through sarcopenia, that sponge shrinks. It becomes small and less absorbent. Now, that same meal results in much higher blood sugar levels because there's nowhere for the glucose to go. Your pancreas has to work overtime, pumping out more and more insulin to try to get the job done. Over time, your cells become resistant to this constant insulin signal, and suddenly, your risk for type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome skyrockets. Resistance exercises, like squats and push-ups, do more than just use up glucose for fuel. They actually improve the sensitivity of your muscle cells to insulin. At the molecular level, exercise causes more of those glucose doors, which are called GLUT4 transporters, to move to the surface of the muscle cell. This means that every single time you engage those muscles, you are literally making them better at their job of pulling glucose out of your circulation. But the metabolic influence of muscle doesn't stop with glucose. When your muscles contract, they also secrete those amazing signaling molecules we mentioned earlier, called myokines. Think of these as little biochemical messengers that your muscles send out into your bloodstream to communicate with other organs in your body. It is a newly discovered and incredibly exciting field of science. Some of these myokines can cross the blood-brain barrier and enhance neuroplasticity. That's your brain's ability to learn, adapt, and form new connections. They can literally help your brain stay younger. Other myokines travel to your liver and help regulate fat metabolism. Still others interact with your immune system, helping to dampen that chronic, low-grade inflammation we talked about, and promoting overall resilience. So in this way, your muscles are not just responding to signals from your body. They are actively orchestrating whole-body health. They are a command center. Let me give you a practical analogy for this. Think of your muscles as the central bank in your body's economy. When the bank is strong, well-funded, and metabolically active, it manages all the resources in the economy efficiently. It pulls in glucose when it's too high, preventing inflation. It distributes amino acids to where they're needed for repairs. It sends out stable, reassuring signals, the myokines that keep the entire system in balance. But when that central bank shrinks and becomes weak, as it does in sarcopenia, the entire economy suffers. You end up with inflation in this case, high blood sugar. You get systemic problems, like chronic inflammation and hormonal imbalances. The system becomes fragile and prone to crisis. The research on this is absolutely striking. Multiple large-scale studies have found that people with greater muscle mass and strength have significantly lower risks of dying from any cause, what we call all-cause mortality. And this is true even after scientists adjust for other factors like body fat and cardiovascular fitness. In fact, one landmark study that was published in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society found that low muscle strength was a stronger predictor of an early death than even traditional risk factors like obesity. That tells us something incredibly profound. Muscle is not optional for longevity. It is not a nice to have. It is foundational. It is essential. This is why the specific combination of squats and push-ups is so powerful. Together, they recruit a huge amount of muscle tissue from both the lower and upper bodies. They stimulate those mitochondrial adaptations, and they trigger the release of these cascades of beneficial myokines. When you do these exercises, you are not just protecting your legs and your arms. You are fortifying your entire metabolism. You are supporting your brain, and you are calming your immune system. So we know what, and we know the why. But that leads us to the final and perhaps most important question of all. How do you actually make this a sustainable, lifelong habit? And that is where the science of habit formation meets the science of exercise prescription. Let's move into our final section, building a sustainable habit. We now know that squats and push-ups are two of the most powerful tools you have to fight back against sarcopenia. But here is the real challenge, the one where most people stumble. How do we make them stick? The truth is, it is not about doing these exercises once or twice when you feel motivated. It is about weaving them into the fabric of your weekly rhythm, in a way that is both sustainable and progressive. So, what does the science of exercise prescription suggest for older adults? The research is remarkably consistent. The sweet spot for both muscle maintenance and growth is about 2 to 3 sessions per week, per muscle group. That means you do not need to be doing these exercises every single day. In fact, you shouldn't. Recovery days are essential. They are not a sign of laziness, they are a biological necessity. Think of the exercise itself as the spark or the signal for growth. But the actual recovery period, that's the time when the rebuilding and the strengthening actually happen. That's when your cellular construction crews do their best work. Now, let's talk about intensity. You do not need to train to the point of complete exhaustion or failure. That can be discouraging and can even increase your risk of injury. What truly matters is that you challenge the muscle. Research indicates that performing around 8 to 12 repetitions per set, at an effort level where the last 2 repetitions feel meaningfully difficult, is more than enough to stimulate muscle growth or hypertrophy, even in older adults. If doing 12 bodyweight squats or push-ups feels too easy, that's your sign that it's time to progress. You can do this by going deeper into the squat, by slowing down the tempo of the movement, or by moving to a more difficult variation, like moving from the wall to the countertop for your push-ups. And if the exercises feel too hard, you simply regress. You move back to assisted chair squats, or you stay with the wall push-ups for a bit longer. The principle is always the same. Gently challenge your current capacity, and then, over time, gradually increase that challenge. So here is a simple, effective weekly framework you can start with. Pick 2 or 3 non-consecutive days of the week, maybe Monday and Thursday, or Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. On those days, your goal is to perform 3 sets of squats and 3 sets of push-ups. Aim for that range of 8 to 12 repetitions per set. Rest for a minute or 2 between each set. And that's it. It's that simple. On the days in between, you rest, you recover, and you let your body do its work. Over the weeks and months, track your progress. Maybe you'll find you can do more repetitions. Maybe your range of motion will improve, or maybe you'll feel ready to move to a more advanced variation. And here is where the science of habit formation becomes your greatest ally. One of the single most effective ways to build consistency is a technique called habit stacking. This means you anchor these new exercises to an existing automatic routine you already have. For example, you could make a rule for yourself. Every time I make my coffee in the morning, right after I press the start button, I will do one set of squats. Or, every evening, right before I brush my teeth, I will do one set of push-ups against the bathroom counter. These are called micro habits. You are stacking them onto things you already do without thinking. This makes the new habit automatic rather than negotiable. You remove the decision-making process, which is often the hardest part. Let me share one final analogy. Think of your longevity, your health span, as a savings account. Every single set of squats or push-ups you perform is a small deposit into that account. One single deposit does not make you wealthy, but repeated, consistent deposits, week after week, year after year, they accumulate. They gather compound interest. And the dividends? They show up decades later, in the form of independence, energy, and vitality, at a time in life when others may be struggling with frailty and disability. You are investing in your future self today. So let us step back and connect all the dots. We began with the sobering reality that walking alone, while valuable, is simply not enough to protect us from sarcopenia. That silent thief of strength that accelerates with each passing decade. We uncovered how this isn't just about shrinking muscles, but about a fading metabolic organ, leading to a cascade of health issues. And then, we revealed the solution. Not a complicated machine or an expensive pill, but two of the most powerful research-backed movements you can do right in your own home. The squat and the push-up. You made it to the end. And what you've just discovered isn't merely a pair of exercises. It is a fundamental shift in understanding. You have just learned how to regain control over your health from the cellular level up. That is the incredible power of reactivating your body's metabolic engine. I am not asking you to change your entire life overnight. I am asking you to do just one thing. Choose one of these movements, the chair squat or the wall push-up, and just try it. Once. Today. Maybe while waiting for your morning coffee to brew, or during a commercial break on TV, even if it's just for 30 seconds. That is how every great transformation begins. Not with a leap, but with a single small step. And so we can build a community of people on this same journey together. If you feel inspired by this message, please comment with the simple words, "I'm ready for action," below. Your commitment inspires others, and I truly do read every single comment. Please, always remember this. Frailty is not destiny. Sarcopenia is not inevitable. You are so much stronger than you think you are. Your future self, the one who wants to climb stairs with confidence, carry grandkids with ease, and live independently for as long as possible, is counting on the choices you make today. The journey to reclaiming your vitality has just begun. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so we can continue to walk this path together.